Well, at the last family reunion that we had in DeWitt, the started out the Bells, but it's about 50% are Hornbecks that are there, so it's just a family reunion. Wayman got up and he said, I'm afraid that our younger generations are losing the connection that the Hornbecks and the Bells and all these later generations had, and the memories that you and I have from growing up with the Hornbecks. And is there some way we can preserve that? So that's our whole goal, is to try to capture some of this oral history that Barbara knows, Terry knows, I know a lot of it, but you know more because you're one of the elder statesmen of the Hornbeck
Probably
family.
Is the.
You may be the.
I think now
he'll
be
Joyce.
Well, as a man.
As a man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Joyce.
Yeah,
I'm hoping Joyce filled in some blanks with y'all that we don't know here.
Yeah, and so that's what we want to be able to pass down. So the question is, are there memories that you have that you would like to pass down to your grandchildren and great grandchildren, and for them to pass down to their grandchildren and so on? And so that's what we want to capture. And so with that in mind, what is there something that you can just encapsulate a summary of what you want grandchildren to remember and to know about your Hornbeck ancestry, who you are and who your family, who your parents and your grandparents were?
Well,
you can start here.
Of course, I don't remember coming from Kentucky. I was born a few years after that.
Yeah.
But one of the things is that we used to get together real often, and that was always a time of really getting to know each other and everything like that. We had I don't know if Wayman told you about it, but anyway, down on the bow, and we built a little building down there out of scrap lumber, and so we would go down there, like if we played football on Friday night, and after we did, we'd go down there and spend the rest of the night down there. Once in a while, they'd play poker. Of course, we didn't have any money, but just do things like that in that house down on the bow. And so we spent many a night down there. And one particular time, somebody knocked a lantern over, and it caught some on fire. So we were just fixing to get in bed. We had to play if I got it out. By the time we got it out, and I looked around to try to find out where my pants were. Well, Wayman had them on.
And Dwayne had Wayman's on.
It was we didn't notice anything. We were trying to get their britches on like that, but we've laughed about that so many times. But we had great times, and cousins. It was all that there was cousins, and we just had a wonderful time. We didn't do anything illegal. We didn't drink. We didn't smoke. Well, maybe we chewed a little bit. But it was just a wonderful time for several years in doing that.
Yeah.
And brought all us cousins together. And I think that's one reason why we love each other and are always interested in their family. because we were so close together with that.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
kind of behind B. Bullock's.
That's what I was going to ask you. That was
on the what's it
okay.
called, the Bullock levee or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in there somewhere.
Okay.
And
So that would have been pretty close to where the Hornbeck homestead
and
was.
Turner's
Yeah.
farm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it just if you've been out that way, going, if you take the highway or switch back, then it was gravel,
Mm-hmm.
and when you go by on the bow, there it was just about 100 yards down it is where we had the cabin.
Oh, okay.
Back in there,
Okay.
and right in that area, right in there, of course, Dad hunted a lot down there, and he loved to dig around for arrowheads and everything like this.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of them in here. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, that he had, and well, I helped him with it sometimes, but it was one time or another there was a lot of Indians down there
Mm-hmm.
that had that, so that was an interesting thing to me.
Yeah.
And we were either kind of pushed out in that, or they had sicknesses and died off. I'm not sure
Yeah.
which, but yeah, there's lots of arrowheads and I think like it's still throughout that whole territory right back in there.
Yeah.
On that, we were on Uncle Casey's property back in there, and he was always a wonderful guy, helping us in every way. And
Uncle Casey.
Mm-hmm.
and he had a wonderful wife. Oh,
Aunt Grace.
Aunt Grace was great,
Yeah.
and boy, she could straighten us out in a hurry.
Now, Aunt Grace and Uncle Casey didn't have any children of their own,
No.
did they? Okay.
No, they just
they were just aunts and uncles to a whole bunch.
Yeah, it was. It was just tremendous, and always giving us things and helping us along. And there's just nothing we wouldn't do for them. We had wonderful times down there. You had a bunch of kids get together and play, and we had some funny things that took place.
Oh yeah.
And one of the little kids, and of course we had some green persimmons there.
Jake Anderson was the little kid.
On the little kid, he kept wanting to take a bite. So I said, "Oh, all right, okay, take a bite." Well, he took a bite. Well, of course, he began to fuck her up. He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh my gosh, that's poison. It's going to kill you." Well, he took off running, screaming, and then Grace came out, and we had to tell her what happened. Was she grabbed me and she patted my rear end pretty good, but it was funny.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question here. Beulah Anderson, how is she related, or is she related?
Grace and Carrie's sister.
Okay, so Aunt Grace and Carrie and Beulah
were all sisters.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know how confusing it is to a little kid to learn all this stuff? Wasn't it all?
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to have large families, but it is confusing. Okay.
Beulah had Pat Vernon.
Yes.
Bob came in a revival, saw Pat.
Yes.
And they got married a few weeks later. It was really a love at first sight thing. And anyway, but then she married Mr. Anderson, and they had Jake.
Okay.
and
Okay.
they didn't have another child, did
Okay.
they, Dwayne?
Okay. Well, I interjected there and got you off track. So
Well,
you're telling funny stories.
And let me think now a minute. Uncle Casey was a cousin to the Hornbecks, wasn't he? And he
Yeah, I
grew
think
up
so.
with the Hornbecks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was, but I think he was just a cousin. But he lived with the Hornbecks for a while, and I
Okay.
don't know which ones.
And whatever he touched turned into gold.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But he was so
But he shared with
wonderful.
lots and lots of people.
Mhm.
And you know, if we didn't have something that we really needed, and
Mhm.
and Grace and Casey would come by and they'd take care of it.
Mhm.
I mean, we love them not just because of that, but
Mhm.
because they were so loving
Yeah.
people
Mhm.
Super.
and wanted to, you know, help you. Now, again, you know, if we needed our backside whipped on a little bit, why, give it to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we earned every bit of it. But yeah, they were really loving people,
Mhm.
helping out, and it just we've had so many people. I think with all the huge kin folks we had, we didn't have very many that were, well, cheaters or
Not good people.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you know, when we would get together, which we did real often,
Mhm.
everything was just hunky
Mhm.
dory.
Yeah.
Okay.
The did you have something
No,
you
I
wanted?
was just kind of moving along to where
Okay.
you probably were at the same.
I had a thought and then it left me. Does that ever happen to you?
Oh no.
If I could read your mind, I think when we were talking to Wayman yesterday, we were talking about the role that faith played in family in early days and memories of faith and Christianity or the church before.
Dwayne has a little segment in here about how he got started going to church.
Okay.
Well, you can probably tell it without any notes, but do you want to tell it? Do you want me to tell it?
About the preacher?
Yeah, the preacher from the First Christian Church came to Prairie Gym School, where Dwayne started first grade through fifth, I think, and then went into town school. But a preacher from the church came, and I guess they had Sunday school and church in the afternoons on Sunday. And Dwayne said the Sunday school, the kids sat on the running board of pickup, and somebody taught them Sunday school. And so that went on for a while. I don't know how long. And I don't know if it was because maybe more people had vehicles, a truck or something. But then they went into DeWitt to church, and some of the others did as well. And so that's kind of how they got to be in the Christian church.
Okay. Always wondered the history
Uh-huh.
of how the the Hornbecks, because the Hornbecks were like a big majority of the
Uh-huh.
membership of the church.
Yeah, there at one time there was like lots of Hornbecks.
Yeah, we had the minister there was just a fantastic guy and good sermons and you know, if you needed anything, he'd see that you needed. You know, he would take care of it, and whether you went to church there or not, I mean, he just was that way. And it was such an impression on me, and for some reason, and the Lord just.
You're probably talking about Brother Maffett at that point, aren't you?
Yeah, well, yeah.
He was the one that was pretty influential because he was, as Dwayne was, teenager and on, he was the minister there, and I'm sure you remember him as
remember him,
well.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So,
it was
not much personality, but really a loving
Yes,
person.
yes,
when
yes.
we when I went
Entertaining.
to Joplin to the school there, and I enjoyed that very much because after I was there for I don't know a few weeks, Bob Vernon, that's when they were first getting into what is Homestead USA.
The movies that they
Oh,
did on
yes.
And
TV.
programs where he had to be gone so much. Well, I was living in the basement of their house.
Mhm.
And he had where I was staying. He said, "Will you come over and live with us in the basement there," which was real nice.
Mhm.
And because he said I'm gone so much, and you can be there with Pat, and so
Mhm.
that helped me a whole lot because he taught me so much. I would go with him on some things he was doing, and he would talk to me and tell me about it's it is not making a fabulous sermon. It's telling God's word, and God will take care of it if you really want to preach. Then He'll see that it's done.
Mhm.
And He's taught me so much for that, and wonderful, wonderful blessing, and His
Mhm.
blessing I could be around cousin too because of the kids, and uh, I remember they were uh, they're a good little girl, and so anyway they were going to send her by plane back down to DeWitt because they were going to be gone, and so they had asked me if I would go with her on that thing. And I remember one thing we got about I don't know, an hour in there, and so she looked at me and she said, "I need to go to the restroom." I said, "You just have to hold it in and have you on it." Well, it's the first time I'd ever been on an airplane like that.
Dwayne, I think this was in a bus. I think you're getting the stories
Up
mixed
there,
up.
not down here. Sometimes but
Were you flying to Little Rock from Joplin to Little Rock?
we came. Let's see. Yeah, we made a stop in Fort Smith, and
Okay, right.
they kind of hopped out
Yeah, and
on
then
down,
Little Rock. Yeah,
and and came down there
yeah.
and everything. But I thought, here I am, a grown man, and I didn't even know you had a toilet on the airplane. But
Well, you hadn't flown before.
when they took me to one of their shooting of their
Oh, their movies or
Yeah.
their TV programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I mean, and of course, and with Bob, I mean, I learned so much.
Mm-hmm.
And as he would tell me, you know, you're not putting out of something so people will say, "Well, boy, isn't that great?" He said, you just preach what the Word of God says, and as God blesses you, and he just helped me so much. He and his brothers, all of them were wonderful helpers to me.
Yeah.
So I was blessed, and so when I was asked to come down and start a church at Stuttgart, and so we did, and I drug Barbara around everywhere I went, which she really loved that. But God has blessed us through the years, and two fantastic children, and they're just blessings all the way around.
That's right. Let me interject here for the video's sake to clarify that you're talking about Bob Vernon and
Mhm.
his wife Patricia, and
Uh-huh.
Patricia is your first cousin because your mothers are sisters.
Mhm.
And so, and Bob Vernon had a singing group as well as he was a
The
minister.
four brothers,
Four
all
brothers.
of them in the ministry.
Right. Okay. And they did TV programs as well.
Right.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
The whole
The
families.
whole family.
All of their families.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that so it was clear who we
Mhm.
were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob and Bill were twins,
Okay.
but all of them were really good preachers and just wonderful guys.
Mhm.
And I thought, boy, how go to Bible college and live with some of the finest preaching you'd ever hear
Mhm.
anywhere,
Yeah.
and such a humble man as that. And I got to know Pat real well and
Mhm.
everything. So I had a wonderful time there.
There's many of the Hornbecks have married people that have brought a lot into the family as
Mhm.
well, like Pat, although she wasn't a Hornbeck
No.
by birth or her ancestors, direct
Mhm.
ancestors,
Mhm.
but connection,
Mhm.
cousins with the Hornbecks. So it branches out everywhere, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
So those are great memories about childhood, your teen years. That's interesting. I've never heard about the cabin down at the
Mhm.
bayou. I think that's great.
Oh, it was
That
good.
was like Lawrence Edward and Dale
Uh-huh.
and Wayman, and was
Marlon B was there.
yeah, and Merlin B. Homer Lloyd, was he in that or was he
He
not?
came out a few
Came
times.
out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a little story about Marilyn here.
Oh,
Just-
okay.
Just throw it in. He
Sure.
may not want, but
And we're talking about Marilyn
Bell.
Bell.
Uh-huh.
That's Roger Bell's daughter, and he's the son of May Hornbeck
Yes.
Bell.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So, and I don't know where they lived, whether they were kind of close together or not, but Marilyn spent the night with Mr. and Ms. Hornbeck.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly what happened, but when she got up to fix breakfast,
I
whether-
remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah, do you want to tell it?
Well, anyway, Mom had made a after breakfast. Mom had made a comment, but at any rate, her mom was supposed to come and pick her up. And when she got there, and she hadn't been there for just a few minutes, and Marilyn told her mother, she said, I cannot had any breakfast. And so Mama had said something about, we like to not had any breakfast. And that's the first thing she told her mother was, I cannot had any breakfast. So we put that in there.
Well, that's good. You've got that one written down.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could not had any breakfast.
Mhm.
Well, those are great stories, but I also want to see if we can get some stories about your grandparents, J.E. and Leela. Do you have memories that you want to pass on to your grandchildren about your grandparents, J.E. and Leela?
Well, they were those were tough times, tough years. Uh, uh, it was you had to pretty well raise everything you had to eat, whether it's we're talking about hogs or cattle, or we're talking about gardens, and I guess, and they were both pretty hard workers, but especially Grandma, and she was. I think if it came down to it, I think she could have whipped him. Grandpa wasn't that big a guy, but she was quite a bit bigger than he was. But I can remember that, you know, you learn early if you're going to stay alive. You do what they tell you to do, or if they tell you to hush, you hush. You know, and I can't ever remember him saying talk, but it was, you know, just shut. But they were in hard times, and I've often thought about, you know, if we had as hard a time now, all of a sudden, I don't think half the people in America could survive because they don't know how to do things. Back then, you raised it, or you killed it, or you whatever, in order to make ends meet on it. And I've thought lots of times. I don't ever remember either one of them griping and complaining about things. But now they may have it sometimes. But with as many in the family, it's just amazing that they could put up with them.
You know, also Dwayne was young and they were very old when he was around them, so he really wasn't around them very much. He doesn't remember being anyway.
That's what I wondered if you did. What year were you born, Dwayne?
In 36.
36, okay. And Glenn was just a little bit older than you, like a year.
Yeah, he was.
So,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and he had polio at I think he was what, 9 months. I think it was 9 months.
Okay.
Where he had that, and what's his right, right leg and right arm. But he was a warrior, and you know, he didn't like for anybody to have pity on him or make him mad as a fire. You say, do you think you can do so and so? And I mean, that'd fire him up.
Yeah.
Because he was going to do it. He was kind of like me. I tell people all the time, you know, they don't call us hard-headed Hornbecks for nothing.
Let him drink of water.
You, when I talked with Joyce yesterday, I made the comment about her being the one girl in the middle of all these boys, and she reminded me that your mom had 2 other daughters that were born, and Wayman thought that maybe those were twin girls.
No. He mentioned that to me on the phone.
Okay.
Leela, Ella, and I forget the other one.
Leela, Ella, and
it was
Ella
like
Witt.
Every other child there for a few years.
Yeah.
Goodness. Did she? And so they were lived for quite a long time.
One was a year, and
yeah.
I was thinking one was maybe 3. Was that no? Neither one of them. Okay.
That is, that's so sad. Joyce thought that it affected your mom, that it was really, really hard for her.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was.
And then of course, Glenn and I we were together. We could look across the room at each other and know exactly what the other was thinking.
Goodness.
And because we were always getting
Kind
into
of like
something.
twins, but they weren't.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Glenn, even though his right side was, it was small and limp, but if you ever wanted to make him mad, you just say, Glenn, do you think you can do so and so? Well, I mean,
He really could do anything except climb a rope.
Yeah.
I mean, he bowled, he played baseball, and he'd get that ball and throw that glove off and pitch. And
there was another thing about us cousins. We had our own baseball team, and
played Gillette.
we'd play.
Really?
Yeah, you bet.
That's
But
great.
Glenn played first base,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd reach up and get the ball like this and throw it down there and pull that ball out all in one quick motion. And throw it, and he could knock a ball a quarter of a mile, I tell you. He was tough,
Mm-hmm.
but he was the sweetest guy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we were so close together.
Quite a prankster too.
Well, we just look across the room with each other and know exactly what they're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it would work out pretty good, and sometimes we both got fanned for it. But even when in school,
You have something you want to say?
we're the same way.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Dad, can you tell Teresa some of the things that you told me about, or what you remember about Grandma and Grandpa's house and things that y'all did there on their property?
On the what?
About your Grandma and Grandpa's house, the property.
Oh.
there,
Here, right
and
here.
Staying at their house. And stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
see.
When we lived there in Grandpa's house, and during the wintertime,
For a while, you don't know. He doesn't know how long they lived there, but maybe part of the year or something. And why? I don't know.
Part of it was it was cold, and what's the paper on the wall over there, and it'd just be puffing in and out with the wind blowing through because it just had some boards there with it like this, and so we'd gather around the stove in the living room and get good and warm and run into the bedroom, jump in it and jerk the cover over head, eyes and ears, and try to curl up because it was cold.
Yeah. Keep the warmth all day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was.
He also remembers some of the family coming to kill hogs. Do you remember any of that?
Not at the Hornbeck place, but I remember the event of you had several hogs to slaughter, and then you would do it out in the pasture or wherever, and family members would come in and help, and then everybody took their
yeah. That was one.
So
of the
you
things.
had tell us about that experience of what it was like. Was this when you were a young kid, or were you older?
No, I was still a young kid.
Okay.
And about the first, second, third year. But maybe a little bit older than that. But you take a barrel, empty barrel, and dig a slanted hole and let it slide down in it, and then you would put a lot of water in the kettle and get it boiling hot, and taking a bucket and pour it down with a bunch of it down in there. You'd kill the hog, and then you would take it up there and put it down in there and try to pull it back and forth, and so that heat. And as soon as you got up there, then you could almost take your hand and get the
skin to come,
the hair,
the hair,
of course,
get off there.
Bristles, I guess, isn't that what they're called?
Out there, and so it'd be usually around 6 or 8 men there. we would have quite a few hogs that was going to be cut up that day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember that just like it was yesterday. But I had, as I got just a little bit older, then I don't know what, about 7 or 8 years old, and my responsibility was milk 2 cows before I went to school.
And this was at your house
yeah,
on the property where,
Where my family grew up, or you?
no, up at what's Hornbeck's now, where
Okay.
Wayman lives now. But
Okay.
Mr.
Oh, okay.
Hornbeck bought,
yeah.
you know,
Okay.
On that
and
same
so
property,
there
yeah.
he milked. They had a barn with a couple of cows.
Okay.
And
okay.
so, of course, one of my older brothers, Raymond, had a horse, and that was the most stubborn horse. And so the horse would watch me, and so he got to where when he saw me coming out of the house to milk the cows, he would run around there and get those 2 cows out of the bunch of cattle we had, and he would take them to the far side of 160 acres over there. I mean, if I had anything to kill it with, but he did that about 5 or 6 times and got away with it. And I finally got to where I would make sure he didn't see me, and he would do something else, and I'd sneak around and get those 2 cows. Put them out. I had to take those 2 cows and milk them before I went to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I hated that horse. Couldn't nobody ride him but Raymond anyway. But
Yeah.
it was crazy.
So you had to milk those 2 cows before you went to school,
Mm-hmm.
and then that when you were going to Prairie Gym school, or was you were going to school in
DeWitt
And
still,
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
we had,
Okay.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did have a funny story about Prairie Gym School, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me some stories about your Prairie Gym school days.
Well, number one, so you won't forget this, but Bobby Hutz with the Hutzwiths that lived down there,
Mm-hmm.
and Bobby and I, and we always tell people say, where'd you go to school? Well, they mean college. We say we go to Prairie Gym. Prairie Gym, I never heard that. You never heard of that? Oh gosh, man, one best school in America. You never heard of it? No, I never heard of it. But,
This was you and Bobby that did this?
Yeah,
Oh.
they still do.
Oh.
yeah, we still do. We still do. It's Prairie Gym School, but Prairie Gym was a place that we just still associate with it because of the good times we had and everything like that. So it was kind of a unique thing, but it's still today, I still, would tell people, and when they say, where'd you go to school? Prairie Gym.
When Dwayne and Bobby are talking on the phone, Bobby will usually say something about, we're those Prairie Gym boys. So that's Terry was wanting you to tell about your teacher.
Oh.
And this was not, I don't know if it was his first grade or second grade. I don't know how far along, but
the teacher we had, I'm not sure. I think she became ill and could no longer teach. Well, this girl had just finished her thing to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So she drives out there, and she comes in, and along about 3 hours later, maybe right after lunch, and a neighbor of ours down there had 2, I think it was 3 daughters that went to school down there. But anyway, this older girl, who was, I guess, I think in the 9th grade,
Sixth, because they just went
so
to sixth.
and she would come by to, I don't know what she was going to do, but anyway, the teacher told her, said you can't do that. Said you go down and sit, go back to your seat. And she said no. And she said you go back and get in your seat in there. And she said no, I'm going to do so and so. And she said you can't. So she grabbed her by the arm, was going to take her back. Well, this gal she was a tough kid, and she grabbed that teacher, and she spun her around, and finally she said, "Oh, get away from her!" And she held her by her hair and jerked her around, and then grabbed her by the arm, and slung her around and hit the doors on the front, where your glass thing there,
Window pane,
yeah, like that. And she slammed her like this and knocked most of the glass out of the one like that. And the teacher kind of screamed at her and jerked open that door and ran out and jumped in the car and left.
That was her first
That
and
was
last
her
day of school.
First day to teach school and last day of school.
Her name was Edra Ann Price, Mac Price, if you ever heard of him. He flew a crop duster when nobody else was flying anything, lived out toward Ethel.
Oh, yeah.
And Edra Ann and my mother were best friends, so that was her age time. But then later, she was the postmaster at DeWitt Post Office. Edra Ann Jones by that time for a long time. But
so I guess it didn't.
Yeah, just about 300 yards down the road from us. I ain't going to make that gal mad.
Don't mess with those girls.
Don't mess with that girl.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Oh, that's a good school story. I think we got enough school stories. That's pretty good. Let's see. We talked about your mom and dad. Did you have any more memories you wanted us to get down about your dad, Lester Hornbeck, and your mother was Carrie, and her maiden name
Hammett.
Okay. Any stories that you want to put down and for us to etch in stone about your mom and dad?
Well,
I think
Terry must have one.
Let's get Dwayne's first.
well,
Oh.
my dad was a Hornbeck. You need anything else?
And now, is that one of the hard-headed Hornbecks?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I tell people the time I said, they didn't call us hard-headed Hornbecks for nothing. We earned it.
Tell her about your being at the table and drinking glass of tea and gulping.
Oh yeah, I got in a habit of drinking, taking it like that on it, like that, and he told me to stop it. And I said, I can't do it, Dad. He said, yeah, you can. I said, no, I can't. He went on and got a glass of tea, sat down in front of me, and he said, okay, drink it. And he put it in like that, and he said, if I hear you drink, he said, I'm going to slap you through that wall. And I knew he meant not adding sin to it. You're going to go through it. Well, I picked it up. I drank that whole thing, and to this day, I've never said, oh.
Learned that lesson.
Yeah.
Okay. How about your mother? Do you have a story about your mother, or just anything about your mother?
Oh,
Carrie?
Mother was a sweet
Person.
wonderful woman, good Christian. That I don't know how she put up with all of his kids, but of course, see, they had every other child
Between
would at
Raymond
least
and
be
Joyce.
short lived.
Raymond and Joyce, between Raymond, Joyce, and Glenn, I believe.
Well, and then there was then Glenn, and who almost died,
Mhm.
and then there was me, and I think he thought we've we've got too many already, you know, and
Dwayne was the surprise. He was the last of the bunch.
I was the last batch. I got kicked around.
Oh,
No,
that's not true.
not really. They I guess they knew to spoil me because they had won it. But no, I had some wonderful parents. Dad was stern, but he needed to be. And then back in those times, you know, you didn't disobey, and your own hand. If you're going to eat and sleep there, you're going to work.
Mhm.
And you say, well, I can't do that. I don't know how. I'll show you how.
Mhm.
And it's just Dad was, what they during his raising up. I mean, everything was tough. I mean, tough. And they had back in days when there was an awful lot of whiskey homemade,
Mhm.
and he used to drink some then back then, but he learned his lesson, I think, early. But
Then he didn't drink anymore.
No, and when he became a Christian, then he just really changed his whole life.
Mhm.
He was not the man he was when
C.W. and Raymond were growing up.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
mellowed,
Mhm.
you know. But
Yeah, well,
one thing that Dwayne, I think, hadn't thought to say, but after he decided to go to go to Ozark and be a minister, well, Miss Hornbeck told him, she said, you know, I prayed, I don't know whether when he was a baby or on through, but that you would become a preacher. But she never said anything to Dwayne
Mhm.
about it.
Mhm.
But
yeah, I think he said it was, I think from about the time I was born,
yeah.
and because that was about the time that he started going to church and gave his life to Christ, which I really appreciated that very much. But
Miss,
must being the baby of the family,
Mhm.
that was tough.
It is. I'm the baby of the family too.
Yeah.
And everybody would say that you were spoiled, but we weren't spoiled.
We weren't
Not at
spoiled.
all.
No, not at all.
We were those precious children.
well, by the time the babies come along, the parents are worn out with, you know, and they're not as hard on the kids as
Yeah.
they were to start with. You know, I
Yeah.
know C.W. and Raymond tried Mr. Hornbeck's patience a lot, but he didn't have any patience when they were growing up,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, back then it was also. I mean, times were hard. You
Sure.
know, it was really hard, and so you didn't have to. You know, if a kid didn't do what you told him to do, like that, then so you wouldn't have to do it. If he said, you know, well, it's like down in when we lived in Grandma and Grandpa's house down there. When we had I don't know, about, I think it was 14 or 15 cattle there. Well, if you ever had the hand pump like this, and for 16 cows, well, every one of them could take a bathtub full of.
just slurp it right.
Sure.
I mean, I would pump, and if Dad or Mom wasn't looking, I'd get me a stick and I'd try to
Try to run them off.
run that off and stuff. I mean, they could take 5 gallon just.
They drink all day.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's
Right.
just gone.
Tell them
Like
their
that.
turns up.
Yeah.
Another thing about Miss Hornbeck, you would ask about anything about them. She was a wonderful cook.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
everybody loved to come to her house to eat because,
Uh-huh.
you know, up until she quit cooking, she made really good stuff.
Mhm.
But, you know, when they were putting the crops in and when they were getting the crops out, extra people they'd get from town or here or there that would help with the
Mhm.
planting and the harvest. And so Miss Hornbeck fed them too. And she didn't feed them in plates. She made platters for them,
Mhm.
particularly the colored people.
Mhm.
And some came from over at Dumas, where C.W. and Raymond and Carol farmed. But it didn't matter how much food she put on their plate and big old homemade rolls and coconut pie and all that stuff. They ate it,
Mhm.
you know, and
Every
bite of
yeah.
it. So that was, and I learned things from her that I cook today. My
Mhm.
mother was a good cook as well, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
but Miss Hornbeck was used to cooking for a bunch of people, you know,
Mhm.
and so she taught me several things about
Yeah.
cooking. Mhm.
I know my sister Marilyn talks about some
Uh-huh.
of the recipes that she learned from Aunt Carrie.
Yeah.
You bring up an interesting subject that we've not talked about that era of farmers, in that the planting and harvesting and the people coming in, other members of families.
Yeah,
And
sometimes.
in your family, Dwayne, let me get the family tree here. Your brothers, Raymond and C.W., they farms in another,
In Dumas.
in
Dumas.
Dumas.
Outside of Dumas on both sides.
Okay, so then would they come over to help with harvest and with planting up in Arkansas County on your dad's farm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Mr. Hornbeck went down there and helped them too. You know, hopefully it was going to be at different weeks, you know, when it's coming to. And Dwayne did some too, you know, but he wasn't there all that many years to do that.
So, oh gosh, I just lost the question I was going to ask you. So then this method of feeding, how did they do that literally, as far as, did the workers come up to the house and did they feed out like on the lawn, or?
Well, sometimes they sat out there in that laundry room in later years, didn't they, Dwayne?
Yeah.
Or maybe outside.
As long as they can get in the shade somewhere and sit down. But because they would, I mean, you could just pile up a plate of stuff and it's going to be slicked up, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
But,
and it wouldn't be just a whole crew of them. I mean, it might be, 3 to 6 to 8 people, probably no more than that.
Yeah.
Unless it was a family, and of course, if that was the family, well, they probably all scrounged into the house.
Sure.
The ones they brought from Dumas were good workers on that thing, and boy, they loved to come up because they didn't get the meal.
They knew they were going to get good meals.
They were going to get that and get treated.
So it was the people that worked for C.W. and Raymond as a rule, and that would have been probably 2 or 3 at the most.
Okay.
But yeah,
they came for Miss Carrie's cooking too,
as
well as the paycheck they might get.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, those are that's kind of a generations in the past that was pretty much the rule as to the way you did harvest and planting.
And if you treated them right, and things like that. And
Well, I had.
then next year
Excuse
they
me.
were standing in line and wanted to come over. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will be of interest to y'all, but Dwayne had put it in here because it was interesting to him. But do you remember Sarah Jane Johnson?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
and she lived down from them, and then later, and maybe when they lived down toward your house or at that era, I don't know, but then later she lived with them, and Mr. Hornbeck built a room onto the pump house, I think it was.
Now,
And
this the Sarah Jane that
later
later worked for my grandma?
and
Okay.
Gertrude,
Exactly,
I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I did not know that she started with the Hornbeck thing. Okay.
Well,
At the Merle
She,
place.
yeah, when
Okay.
I think where
She,
Denny's parents.
she loved each one of us, but Glenn and I were, well, I mean, she just loved us.
Yeah,
But she saved us from, Delta didn't have any whippings.
you know, because Miss Hornbeck would say, if you do this, you're going to get a whipping. Well,
And
probably they did it.
she'd say, them Miss Carey, them boys said they gonna be good. They gonna be good. Said they just little boys. They be good. And so a whipping didn't do much good. So Mom knew we were afraid of the darkness, and so we had under the stairwell.
It's
there
a
was-
2-story house
the
where
doors
Wayman's
would
house
open up.
now is.
So
Okay.
she'd
old
put us in
house.
there and shut the door. It'd be dark, and of course, I hated the dark. I was scared of the cat. I had, so we would get in trouble, and I'd run over and jump down and sit in, and sit on her foot and around her leg and hug on it and claim to be on the other one. And so she said, Miss Carey said, that this little boy, they're gonna be good. They'll be good.
Yeah.
So she would back up to that place under the staircase and open the door, scoot back into it and sit down.
Go in with them.
And she'd
Oh.
sit in there with us. But I mean, just a marvel lady.
Yeah.
And,
So you would remember.
I did just a little
Vaguely,
bit. Just,
uh-huh.
Yeah.
This woman that lived down the lane from us.
We wanted to mention about his grandparents, and you may already know this, about him living out in a tent 2 or 3 different times.
I don't know that story. Is that one that you had written down?
Yeah,
living
yeah,
in a
I
tent?
think,
Okay.
yeah, I think so.
It seems like Joyce mentioned something about that when I first talked to her on the telephone. But so yeah.
When she said we're moving outside,
And that might have been one of the times that his family lived there with them.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that, but
Mhm.
he said his grandparents weren't living in the house
Mm.
when they lived
Mhm.
there for
Yeah.
a period of time.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you made this for her, didn't you?
Can we
you?
take
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
okay.
and so it's
That'll
got
help fill in the gaps.
yeah, and not things that you maybe want to use, but just
well,
for your own interest.
yeah.
Mhm.
This has been a fascinating,